Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Techify with Adil. So today in this video we will be discussing about two topics. One is Azure conditional access and also the RBAC role based access control. So we'll be discussing about these two topics here. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel, like and share my videos. If you want to learn about Azure fundamentals for exam or just for the knowledge purpose, you can just look at my videos in Azure fundamentals playlist. So conditional access is a tool that Microsoft Entra ID uses to allow access or deny to resources based on the identity signals. The signals include who the user is, where the user is, and what device the user is requesting access from. So conditional access helps the IT administrators to empower users to be productive wherever and whenever, protect the organization's assets. So conditional access also provides a more granular multi-factor authentication experience for users. For example, a user might not be challenged for second authentication factor if they are at known location. So they might be challenged for second authentication factor if the sign-in signals are unusual and they are at unexpected location. During sign-in, conditional access collects signals from user, makes decision based on those signals, and then enforces that decision by allowing or denying the access request or challenging for a multi-factor authentication. The signal might be the user's location, the user's device, or the application that the user is trying to access. Based on these signals, the decision might be to allow full access if the user is signing in from their usual location. If the user is signing in from an unusual location or a location that's marked at high risk, then the access might be blocked entirely or possibly granted after the user provides a second form of authentication. Enforcement is the action that carries out the decision. For example, the allow action is to allow access or require the user to provide a second form of authentication. So in brief, based on the user's location, say example if they are in office location, that we can consider as a known location. So if we are accessing to the resources from the known location, then the conditional access will not be asking for multi-factor authentication like the second challenge. So it will just the users can log in and start using it. And when the user are accessing from a unknown location or new location or marked as high risk kind of locations, then based on the conditions we have applied, either it will be rejected or it will be challenging the user to have multi-factor authentication. So user have to do an additional authentication to make sure he's the user. This is not only just based on the location, also based on the device. Usually in our companies will not have a direct access to the internet, like open internet access will not be allowed for the security reasons, but due to some kind of application testing or some kind of scenarios, there might be exception cases. So it depends on companies organizations policies. So some organizations will have a separate notebook that will have open access to the internet, so that will not be used to access to the company resources. So those kind of devices, if users not using the right device to access to the resources, then that can be rejected. So all these kind of conditions can be applied through Azure conditional access tool, makes the organizations asset more protective, and also for IT administrators it's more easy to manage all this access. So when we will need the conditional access tool, so require multi-factor authentication to access an application depending on users request or role, location or network. So in this case, for having an additional challenge, we will use the conditional access. Then require access to services only through approved client applications. Example, you could limit which email applicants are able to connect to your email service. Require users to access your application only from managed devices, the one what I explained just now. So managed devices is a way that meets your standards of security and compliance. block access from untrusted sources, such as access from unknown or unexpected locations. So based on location, or based on the who the applications is, or based on the device, or based on the locations, we can apply the conditional access. So next we will be seeing the RBAC. So it's a role based access control. So instead of giving each person's permissions, so we can assign a role to that person, and that role will have a predefined permissions. Also in Azure we can create our own customized role and give the permissions to that role. So whoever being added to that role will have those permissions. When you have a multiple IT and engineering team, how can you control what access they have to the resources in your cloud environment? The principle of least privilege says you should only grant access up to the level needed to complete a task. So if you only need read access to a storage blob, then you should only be granted read access to the storage blob. Write access to the blob shouldn't be granted, nor read access to the other blob storages. It's a good security practice to follow. However, managing the level of permission for entire team would become tedious. Instead of defining the detailed access requirements for each individual and then updating the access requirements when new resources are created or new people join the team, Azure enables you to control access through Azure role-based access control. So Azure provides built-in roles that describe common access rules for cloud resources. You can also define your own rules. So each role has an associated set of access permissions that relate to the role. When you assign individuals or groups to one or more roles, they receive all the associated access permissions. So if you hire a new engineer and add them to Azure RBAC group of engineers, they automatically get the same access as the other engineers in the same Azure RBAC group. Similarly, if you add additional resources and point Azure RBAC at them, everyone in the Azure RBAC group will now have those permission on the new resources as well as the existing resources. So just not only individual person we will be adding to the access group. So we can just have a group that contains many users. Say example, you have a desktop team like 10 members, so all 10 members are added to a group called desktop engineers. So if you want to give them access to blob storage, then you can just add the entire group to the accessing the blob storage, creating read access to the blob storage. So the entire team who under the group will be able to access to the blob storage. Just you want to remove them, you no need to do individual removing, just remove the group from that permission. So it's very easy to handle, and also it's very easy to revoke the permission when the user is out of the organization, or the user is changing the team, so that you want to revoke his permission. No need to go individually remove or check on what kind of access he has. Just we can go to the user, we can see what is the group added. If it is, just do a review, and whatever group is not to be under him, so just we can remove the group, so the permission will be revoked. So here the following diagram shows you the relationship between roles and scope. So a management group, subscription and resource group might be given the role of owner. So they have the increased control and authority. An observer who isn't expected to make any updates might be given a role of reader of the same scope, enabling them to review or observe the management group, subscription or resource group. So this is the scope, like management group, subscription, resource group and resources. So all Azure virtual machines account, everything comes under the resources. So here you see whoever wants to just observe, meaning just need to have permission to look at but not write anything there, or do or don't have or shouldn't have permission to do any changes, then we give them observer, that's a reader permission. So resource specific, custom and then contributor, so users managing resources. So contributor is usually will have the right permission. Then if you need any customizing permission, like he should be able to write only to this resources, or he should be able to write but not delete it, all those kind of customized permissions, or resource specifically only this resource he should be able to access, all these kinds we can will be able to assign. Then owner will be the admins will be the owner of the management group, subscription, and also the resources. So for based on the resource group or the permissions whatever been given, so it is an automated resource for our permissions for the resources. So for RBAC access control applied to resources, role based control is applied to a scope which is a resource or set of resources that is access applies to. So that's why here we have the process automated, because when you apply a set of rules to the resource or to a set of resources, then it applies to the access as well. So scope include management group, single subscription, a resource group, or single resources. So observers usually manage the resources. Admins and automated processes illustrate the kind of users or account that would typically be assigned each of the various roles. So Azure RBAC is hierarchical also, in that when you grant access at a particular parent scope, those permissions are inherited to the child scopes. So when you assign a owner role to a user at the management group, so we have a user having assigning a owner role to the management group, so that the user can manage everything in all subscriptions within that management group, because you're making him the owner of this management group. So the subscription comes under this management group, the resource group comes under this subscription, so they will be able to manage all the subscriptions under this management group. So it's a hierarchical, so top level, and this will be the bottom level. So when you assign a reader role to a group of all subscription scope, the members of that group can view every resource group within that subscription. So it will follow the hierarchical. So any permission or role assigned to parent group, its child scope will have the permission inherited. So that's one of the important thing to take note of, because the subscriptions, or say example if you are giving a permission to a subscription and the resource group is under that, so what are the resource group under that also should be taken note of, because when you give permission to a subscription, then the resource group follows the same permission. So Azure RBAC is enforced. So Azure role-based access control is enforced on any action that's initiated against an Azure resource that passes through Azure Resource Manager. So Resource Manager is a management service that provides a way to organize and secure your cloud resources. So you typically access Resource Manager from the Azure portal or Cloud Shell or PowerShell and command line interface. So Azure role-based access control doesn't enforce access permission at application or data level. So application security must be handled by your application. So application role-based access control uses an allow model. So when you are assigned a role, Azure RBAC allows you to perform actions within the scope of that role. So if one assignment grants you read permission to a resource group and a different role assigns a grant you write permission to the same group, you have both read and write permission on the resource group. So it will not be like clashing. So you have from one group you have been assigned a permission and the another group gives another permission, it will just combine, club the permissions together, so you will have both the permissions assigned.